Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into the wacky world of cartoon physics and seeing how it stacks up against real-world science. Get ready for some serious silliness as we explore the laws of physics, cartoon style. Ever wondered what would happen if you ran off a cliff like Wile E. Coyote or tried to fit a whole car into a tiny bag? Let's find out. You know the scene? Wile E. Coyote, in hot pursuit of the Roadrunner, runs straight off a cliff. But instead of plummeting straight down, he hangs in midair for a beat, glances at the camera and then drops like a stone. Hilarious, right? But is it scientifically accurate? Let's break it down. In the real world, we have this thing called gravity. It's a force of attraction between any two objects with mass. The Earth, being a giant ball of mass, exerts a pretty strong gravitational pull on us. That's what keeps us grounded and gives us weight. Now when Wile E. Coyote runs off that cliff, he's no longer in contact with the ground. The only force acting on him is gravity, pulling him downwards. There's no invisible hand holding him up in the air, no matter how much he wants there to be. You see, in the real world, we can't just defy gravity, because it's convenient for the plot. Once you're in freefall, you're in freefall. The moment Wile E leaves the edge of the cliff, gravity takes over, and he starts accelerating downwards. This whole hanging in midair thing is a classic cartoon trope, and it's all about comedic timing. It gives the audience a moment to register the situation, chuckle at the character's predicament, and brace themselves for the inevitable plunge. But here's the thing about inertia. It only applies when there's no net force acting on an object. As soon as Wile E steps off that cliff, gravity becomes the net force, and inertia goes out the window. Think of it like this. Imagine you're on a roller coaster. When you go over a steep drop, you feel that weightless sensation for a moment. That's because you're momentarily in free fall, just like Wile E. But you don't stay suspended in midair, do you? Gravity pulls you down the track, and the coaster's momentum keeps you moving forward. So while it makes for great cartoon slapstick, the reality is that running off a cliff wouldn't end with a delayed fall. It would be an immediate descent, and it probably wouldn't be very funny for Wile E. Coyote. But hey, that's cartoon physics for you. It's all about bending the rules of reality for comedic effect. And you know what? It works. We suspend our disbelief because it's entertaining, and it allows for some truly creative and hilarious scenarios. But it's important to remember that what we see in cartoons isn't always a reflection of how things work in the real world. Gravity is a powerful force, and it doesn't discriminate between coyotes and cartoons. So next time you see Wile E. Coyote defying gravity, just remember it's all in good fun. And maybe be thankful that real life doesn't always follow the rules of cartoon physics. Understanding the science behind these gags can make them even more enjoyable. So, the next time you watch a cartoon, you can appreciate the humor and the science behind it. After all, cartoons are a blend of creativity and exaggeration, making the impossible seem possible. And that's what makes them so much fun to watch. The classic anvil drop. It's one of those timeless gags that has been a staple in cartoons for generations. It's a staple of cartoon violence, a trope that has entertained audiences for decades, a seemingly harmless way to inflict comedic pain on unsuspecting characters. The exaggerated reactions and the over-the-top scenarios make it all the more hilarious. But let's be real for a moment, folks. What if we took a step back and thought about the real-world implications of such an event? What would happen if an anvil actually fell on someone's head? It's a question that might seem absurd at first, but it's worth exploring. In the cartoon world, an anvil falling from the sky might flatten a character like a pancake, creating a moment of slapstick comedy, only for them to pop back up a few seconds later, dazed but unharmed. It's all part of the charm and magic of animation. But in the real world, the outcome would be far more serious. The consequences of such an impact would be nothing short of catastrophic. Let's talk about impact force. This is where the science comes into play. When an object like an anvil falls, it gains momentum due to gravity. The longer it falls, the more speed it picks up. The longer it falls, the faster it goes, and the greater its momentum. This is basic physics, but it's crucial to understanding the potential damage. When it finally hits something, all that momentum has to go somewhere. The energy transfer can be devastating. That's where impact force comes in. The force of an impact depends on a few factors: the mass of the object, its velocity, and the duration of the impact. The force of an impact depends on a few factors: the mass of the object, its velocity, and the duration of the impact. In the case of an anvil, we're talking about a very heavy object falling from a significant height, which means it's going to hit with a lot of force. In the case of an anvil, we're talking about a very heavy object falling from a significant height, which means it's going to hit with a lot of force. the impact would be immense. Now, the human body is remarkably resilient, but it does have its limits. Our bones and tissues can only take so much. Our bones, while strong, can only withstand so much force before they fracture. The skeletal system is tough but not invincible. Our organs are delicate and easily damaged. Even a minor impact can cause significant internal injuries. And our brains, well, they're pretty important and not designed to handle sudden, forceful impacts. A blow to the head can have serious, long-lasting consequences. So, when that cartoon anvil comes crashing down on a character's head, it's not just a harmless flattening, it's a scenario that would be deadly in real life. In reality, the impact would be devastating. We're talking about severe skull fractures, brain trauma, internal bleeding, and a high likelihood of, well, let's just say it wouldn't be pretty. We're talking about severe skull fractures, brain trauma, internal bleeding, and a high likelihood of, well, let's just say it wouldn't be pretty. The medical consequences would be dire, but cartoons often employ a bit of comedic exaggeration, right? They take real-world phenomena and amplify them for humorous effect. This exaggeration is what makes cartoons so entertaining and memorable. And that's part of what makes them so enjoyable. We can suspend our disbelief and enjoy the absurdity. We can laugh at the absurdity of it all because we know it's not real. It's a safe way to explore the impossible. But it's still important to remember that real-life physics don't work the same way as cartoon physics. The laws of nature are unforgiving. Anvils are heavy, gravity is unforgiving, and our bodies are fragile. It's a combination that can lead to serious injury. So the next time you see a cartoon character get flattened by an anvil, chuckle at the absurdity of it all, but maybe be thankful that real life doesn't involve quite so much falling heavy metal. It's a relief to know that such scenarios are confined to the realm of fiction. And remember folks, always be aware of your surroundings. You never know what might be lurking above. You never know when an anvil might decide to take a tumble. It's always good to stay alert. Just kidding, or am I? The world of cartoons is full of surprises after all. Have you ever seen a cartoon character pull a seemingly impossible feat, like pulling a giant object out of a tiny bag? It's one of those moments that makes you laugh and scratch your head at the same time. It's a classic gag that defies all logic and reason, leaving us both amused and bewildered. But in the world of cartoons, anything is possible, right? The rules of reality bend and twist to the whims of imagination. One minute, there's a tiny little bag, barely big enough to hold a sandwich. It seems so ordinary and unassuming. The next, out pops a giant object like a car, a piano, or something equally absurd. Or even a whole house. The sheer audacity of it is both hilarious and mind-boggling. It's enough to make you question the very fabric of reality. How can something so big come from something so small? But let's take a step back into the real world for a moment and talk about spatial dimensions. Here things are a bit more grounded. We live in a three-dimensional world, meaning that every object has length, width, and height. These are the basic building blocks of our physical reality. These dimensions determine an object's volume, which is the amount of space it occupies. It's a fundamental concept in physics and everyday life. Now here's the thing. You can't fit an object with a larger volume into a space with a smaller volume without changing the shape or compressing the object in some way. It's a simple yet unbreakable rule. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't work. The laws of physics are pretty strict about that. So, when a cartoon character pulls a car out of a tiny bag, they're essentially breaking the laws of physics in the most entertaining way possible. They're suggesting that the car somehow occupies less space than it actually does, which is a delightful impossibility. They're suggesting that the car somehow occupies less space than it actually does, which is impossible without some serious technological intervention. Even our most advanced technology can't quite achieve that level of spatial manipulation. We do have things like compression technology in the real world. It's fascinating how much we can achieve with it. Think about how we can store gigabytes of data on tiny micro SD cards. It's a marvel of modern engineering. Or stream high-definition movies over the internet. These feats are impressive, but they still follow the rules of our physical world. These technologies rely on compressing information into smaller packets, making efficient use of space and bandwidth. But they still operate within the laws of physics. They don't break the rules, they work cleverly within them. But the kind of compression we see in cartoons, where a car can be shrunk down to the size of a thimble, well, that's pure fantasy. It's a delightful escape from reality. Where a car can be shrunk down to the size of a thimble, well, that's pure fantasy. It's a delightful escape from reality. It's a testament to the boundless creativity of animation, where the only limit is the creator's imagination, where imagination trumps the limitations of the physical world. It's a playground where the impossible becomes possible. So, while we can marvel at the absurdity of a car fitting into a tiny bag in cartoons, let's appreciate the creativity and humor behind it. Let's remember that it's all in good fun. It's a reminder that sometimes it's okay to let go of logic and just enjoy the ride. It's a reminder that in the realm of animation, anything is possible, and the laws of physics are merely suggestions. It's a world where creativity reigns supreme, and the laws of physics are merely suggestions. But in the real world, we're still bound by the laws of physics. Our everyday lives are governed by these unbreakable rules. Our cars require a certain amount of space, and there's no getting around that. Our bags can only hold so much, no matter how much we wish they could hold more. And fitting a large object into a small space usually involves a lot of Tetris-like maneuvering and maybe some creative rearranging. It's a skill we all develop over time. So the next time you see a cartoon character pull off a seemingly impossible feat of spatial manipulation, just smile and enjoy the ride. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated fun. Just smile and enjoy the ride. It's a reminder that sometimes it's fun to suspend our disbelief and embrace the impossible. After all, that's what makes cartoons so magical and enduring. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more fun science content. See you next time. Leave a comment below on which cartoon physics trope you'd like us to analyze next.